Hi, my name is Peter Lee. I'm a commercial, landscape and a nature wildlife photographer. And the question I want to address is the difference between a full frame sensor camera and a crop sensor camera. Now before I go any further, please do hit that subscribe button, and if you like the video, give it a thumbs up. And I'll be producing more videos later, so with a subscribe you'll be kept informed. So, what do we mean by a full frame sensor camera? What do we mean by a crop sensor camera? Now, the crop sensor camera has really two names, and I'll be using them sort of interchangeably. A crop sensor, or we often call it an APS-C camera. The two terms mean the same thing. But when we look at a full frame sensor camera, for those who go back to the days of film, then the image size on the sensor, and I'm talking here particularly about the Canon camera, the full frame Canon camera, it's 36 by 24 millimeters. So that's a full frame sensor. The crop sensor, or the APS-C on the Canon, and I'm going to here talk about the Canon 50D, has a image size of 22.3 by 14.5 millimeters. Now don't be too concerned about writing this down, because there is a PDF document which I'm going to attach to this video, and you'll be able to make sense of the specifications. So what I've done is I've taken my little model outside and I've taken a picture using two cameras. First of all, a full frame Canon EOS 5 DSR, and the second one is using a Canon EOS 50D. The 50D is a crop sensor camera. The 5 DSR is a full frame sensor camera. And when you look at the two images that are on the handout sheet, you'll find that the one on the left is a full frame, and that's on the 5 DSR. And I've outlined in white dotted lines the image as it appears on the Canon 50D crop sensor camera. So when you look at those two images, they're taking the same camera, the same position, same lens on a tripod, exactly the same position, but the one on the left is full frame and the one on the right is crop sensor. And you'll notice that it almost has a zoomed in appearance, which is correct. So here we have to talk about the camera itself. So let's drop down to the two cameras. The Canon 5 DSR is a 53 megapixel camera, and the 50D is 15 megapixel. The 5 DSR is full frame, and the 50D is a crop sensor, or as we talk about, the APS-C. And there's a crop factor which is extremely important. For the full frame, the crop factor is a 1, and for the Canon 50D has a crop factor of 1.6. On the second page, you'll see the effect of the lens choices. Let's skip down to that and see what this crop factor, how it applies. If you take a lens, say a Canon EF 100 millimeters, on a full frame camera, that is what you get 100 millimeters. But you put that on a crop sensor camera, in this case the 50D, it now is 160 millimeters. It's a multiplier by 1.6. If we take a zoom lens, which is an interesting one, the EF 24 to 70 millimeters, then that's what you get on a full frame camera. But on a crop sensor camera, the APS-C, you get a 38.4 to 112 millimeters. And you'll see the same for a 28 millimeter to 135. Then that's what you get on a full frame, but you're getting a much larger image on the crop sensor camera. You're getting actually a 44.8 times 216 millimeters. So it's almost like you're having a telephoto lens. But please bear in mind that there are two types of lenses for the Canon. There's either the EF mount or there's an EF-S mount. The EF-S is a lens that is generally cheaper and that's made for the crop sensor camera. But you can't put the EFS mount on a full frame camera. That's why there's an X there. It is just particularly for a crop sensor camera. But even though on the barrel it says 24 millimeters, when you put that on the APS-C camera, even though it is an EFS mount for an APS-C camera, you still have to use that 1.6 multiplier, so you're actually getting a 38.4 millimeters. So one would think that the having the advantage of a zoom will be more useful than having just a standard, say, full frame sensor camera. Well, yes and no. There are two ways to make a crop of any image. The first one, of course, is using full frame, and then in post-production, say on Photoshop, you crop. That's a post-production crop. There's an automatic crop, which is done in a crop sensor camera. It crops automatically for you. And every single time you do a crop, either in post or on the camera, it results in lower resolution. So let's look at this resolution. At the top of the second page, I've got the max print size. Taking this image of the model, the Boy Scout, I can actually get, for the 5DSR, a 19.31 times 28.96 image, which is great. On the crop sensor camera, it's reduced to 10.56 by 15.84 inches. And this is at 300 pixels per inch. So you can see that having a crop sensor camera results in a reduced print size. Do you have to have a reduced print size? And the answer is no. There's a proportionality between the pixels per inch, the resolution, and the actual size of the print image. So looking down at the choice that we have here, under conclusion, we could actually have we can take the crop sensor camera and reduce from 300 pixels per inch to 240 pixels per inch, and that would increase the print size by up to 13.2 by 19.8. So every time you change the size of the print, you affect the actual pixel count, the resolution. So I could actually go to 200 pixels per inch, and that will give me a 15.84 image for this particular camera by 23.76. So clearly I could increase my print size by reducing my resolution from 300 pixels per inch down to 200 pixels per inch. But there's a caveat, and the point is this, that at 200 pixels per inch, you are getting into the realm of sort of poor resolution. And I've just printed my book on birds and sent that to the publisher. And the minimum print, or the minimum resolution that they would accept is 200 pixels per inch. So the crop sensor camera will result in a smaller print size, and you can increase the print size if you're willing to sacrifice the resolution or the pixels per inch. So it does sound like that the full frame camera is perhaps a better option, or is it? Well, let's consider this. The full frame sensor camera is going to cost you a lot more money than a crop sensor camera. And not only are you going to pay more money for the camera, but you're also going to have to buy the lens as well. And generally, the lenses for a full frame sensor camera are going to cost you more than, say, for a crop sensor camera as well. It's nice to have large print size, isn't it? But then do you want a large print size? Because if you're printing like I do it on 17 by 24 inch paper, you've got to have a large format printer. A large format printer also results in ink cartridges, which are very expensive, and there's quite a large number of them. So Bear in mind that a full frame camera means you'd have to have the large, a large format lens, which are expensive, and generally a large format printer and the inks. So it's a trade-off. Do you want to go to the extra expense of having a full frame sensor camera, or do you want to go for a less expensive option, which is the crop sensor camera? So it's a balance here between in this case, I'm using a Canon 5 DSR, but I've also in the past used the Canon 50D. So there we are. There's a little bit of information about the difference between the crop sensor camera and the full frame sensor camera. As I said, please do hit the subscribe button. If you like this video, just give it a thumbs up, and I'll be producing more videos in the future, and I trust that this particular video helps to sort of clarify some of the differences between crop sensor and full frame sensor camera. So this is Peter Lee, commercial photographer, landscape and wildlife photographer, signing off, and thank you.